but it's an absolute pleasure to welcome in a familiar face to Moose fans. He's now the head coach of the Manitoba Moose, Mark Morrison, joining us on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Mark, what's up? Thanks for doing this, and congratulations on the new gig. Welcome back to the Peg.
Yeah, pretty excited. Well, thanks for having me, and I'm real excited to start heading back that way. I'm in BC now. Start heading back that way in a couple of weeks, and get to work with a lot of people that I know real well.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, for maybe fans that, weren't aware, I mean, you, of course, have been with the organization before, coming over to Manitoba from the St. John's Ice Caps, and then spending the last few years in the National Hockey League with the Anaheim Ducks on the coaching staff. Tell us about the opportunity to be a head coach and why this was such a good fit for you and the organization.
Well, I mean, I guess this all started back in ECHL when I was with the Victoria Salmon Kings. We were a affiliate of the Manitoba Moose at that time. And then I went on to work in St. John's with the Ice Caps, and then in Manitoba with the Moose. And one of the things I liked about working there as an assistant coach, it was like developing players, like working that part of it with the young players. And I think at the end of the day, that's where I'm fitted best at, working with the young player. And we, when I went to Anaheim, kind of did the same thing, but they're by the time they get there, they're pretty much prepared. And I like that preparation thing that comes in when you're in the American Hockey League. So it's kind of my style. It's what I like to do. As far as the head coach position, I think it just gives you a little bit of an advantage when you're developing. If you have meetings or you're trying to work with a young player, you're able to put him in situations on the ice as the head coach where he's going to improve, and that helps speed up the process a little bit.
Now, Mark, the familiarity with the organization, I'm sure, was an asset to both sides. What was it that was so attractive, not only getting a head coaching position in the American Hockey League, but coming back to Winnipeg and working with a number of people that you obviously had a great relationship before?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's excellent. It shows that the organization is fairly loyal to its employees. When I've been away for 4 years in Anaheim, and when I was being interviewed for the job, I looked at the staff, and there's only one or two changes in the Jets staff as well as the Moose staff. So a lot of familiar faces for me to work with. I've been making a lot of phone calls, and it's going back 4 years, but it's made some friendships with a lot of the guys that I'll be stepping back into work with.
Hey, let me ask you this, because you have a very interesting perspective on this. What have you noticed about the Jets organization, both at an AHL level and the NHL club, over the course of the 4 odd years that you were in Anaheim and now returned to?
Well, I think the continuity is important, and they're good at it. And I think that, especially in the American Hockey League, the continuity is important because you're working with these kids for 3 or 4 years. Sometimes it's fast and it's a year or two, but mostly it's 3 or 4 years. And so the continuity there that coaching staff takes you right through to the NHL, I feel is really important. And they've done a good job at that. Pascal's been there for, I worked with him for a year. I think he was there 5 years, maybe 6. And the same staff. So I think that's important, and it's also important in NHL. I think that there's something to be said about working with the same players over a period of time and not change just for the sake of changing.
I think back to your last couple of years with the organization, and it's interesting. When you talk about the cycles of professional hockey with where players are in their different stages. There were some young men that were really just getting their feet wet as professionals when you were last behind the bench with this organization. And now you got a few of them, Josh Morrissey, Kyle Connor, turning into real stars. What's it been like seeing some of those guys and how they've developed when you've been seeing them on the visiting bench when you played them in the National Hockey League?
Yeah, they've done a great job. Ben Sherratt, Jack Roslovic, they're not with the organization anymore, but these guys too, they play in the NHL. Brendan Lemieux, Adam Lowry, Josh Morrissey. Like they've done a great job of bringing up young talent and producing them into NHL players. And some of those relationships are important, and they carry on today. And I quite often tell the story about Jack Roslovic, calling me during the season when I'm working with Anaheim to ask me how he played last night. And unfortunately, we had a game too, so I didn't get to watch it, Jack. But like some of the relationships are important, and they carry on through a period of time.
Your work with the Moose as an assistant, your work in Anaheim, how do you think that's prepared you for this next challenge of your coaching career, to be the boss and to be the guy with last call on that bench?
Well, you know what? The one thing that I learned out of the NHL for my seasons there was that head coaches in the NHL, they're kind of they don't have a lot of patience for young guys making mistakes. I mean, every point in every game and every period and every shift is so important. So I think the one thing that I did learn that I didn't know previously is probably how prepared these young players have to be able to get ice time in the NHL. All the decisions they make with the puck in certain times of the game and puck protection, and just they really need to be prepared to be able to get trust from the head coach in the NHL and get themselves some ice time.
Mark Morrison is the new head coach of the Manitoba Moose, joining us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. How familiar are you with the roster right now? Are there some particular players you're excited to start working with? And I imagine you were probably quite intrigued as to the draft picks as well, knowing that there's a high likelihood that they'll end up being players for you at some point with the Moose.
Yeah, well, we sure hope so. I mean, I haven't had a whole lot of time to go over the roster, but I have briefly gone over. I started to make some phone calls to some of the defensemen today. But yeah, the draft certainly looked like to me that they went after some skill, and Lucius and some of the Russians. So I feel like there's going to be a lot of skill to work with, and and the young players like Cole Perfetti and that in the American Hockey League, there's some skill there too. So quite excited with all the youth that they have.
Mark, it's funny. I mean, it inevitably comes up on this program and just in bar top conversations amongst hockey fans in today's day and age with the flat cap. We're talking about young players. Can they play? Are they ready? I mean, what's your philosophy on what players need to accomplish in the American Hockey League? What are the most important things that they can get out of playing at that level? And how important is that to prepare them to put their best foot forward when they finally get NHL opportunities?
Well, yeah, I think it's hugely important that they learn, how to protect the puck in times of games, play with some maturity. And one of the big things I think I learned is not only on ice, but being a good teammate is huge for a young guy coming into an NHL locker room. So, you have to be able to fit in. The guys need to be able to know that they can trust you. And there's a lot of off-ice things that go on there, as well as, these young guys grow up and mature into young men that can add. But being a good teammate is hugely important. And, of course, the on-ice is, learning how to compete and learning how to protect the puck in very dangerous zones that might cost your team a goal a game. So there's a lot that goes into it, and we're looking forward to getting started.
That being said, Mark, I mean, it's been fascinating being around the game for so long and seeing how, I mean, a lot of these young men that are picked in the draft have sort of been training and behaving almost like professionals for a number of years. I mean, from someone, I mean, you were drafted, played in the National Hockey League, had a, very extensive international career. When you see these kids showing up for the first time, whether it was at a development camp with the Ducks over the last few years or now going into the Moose, how much more advanced are these young players? And is it significantly different than it might have been coaching them even 10 or 15 years ago?
Yeah, you know what? They asked a lot more questions than we did, I think. They want answers for everything. So you really need to back yourself up with everything. They're just a little bit smarter, and they're also a lot more skilled. So when a player, when you go to a player and say, "Hey, I didn't like your last shift," you better be prepared to back that up with why, and maybe you have to show some video of him doing it wrong, and then maybe some video of him doing it right as well. Like they're always questioning things, and which is good, And we were more adamant to just if the coach told us we had a bad shift, well, we just shut up and had a bad shift. But yeah, they want to know everything.
Mark Morrison's with us. Mark, I've got to ask you this, and this player I don't think is going to be spending any time with the Manitoba Moose. And I know you were in another conference, but Brendan Dillon acquired by the Winnipeg Jets last night. I mean, certainly a big piece on the blue line, something that Cheveldayoff had been trying to get. For fans that maybe have not seen a lot of Brendan Dillon, when people ask you what sort of player are the Winnipeg Jets getting in that trade last night, what do you tell them?
I think you're getting somebody that competes real hard, and plays with a lot of emotion and intensity, and he's got a physical presence to him as well. And so, yeah, I enjoyed watching him play in the West. There, he is a competitor.
Well, and a player like him, how beneficial can a guy like that be for a young defenseman graduating from the American Hockey League and playing? We saw Logan Stanley get his crack last year and played a lot of the season with Dylan DeMello, who, certainly is, by every metric makes his partners better and a real calming influence. How important is that for young players to go in and maybe be put in a situation with a more veteran player that has some experience to give them the best chance to succeed?
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge at both levels. The American Hockey League and the NHL, to have mentors beside you that are going to show you the way. That's the best way to teach. A lot of those young players they'll take some information from a veteran before they will a coach at times. So it's those mentors that you can have on the ice as teammates. They're very important, just because that's what the young player listens to. They have a lot of respect for them, and they know that that's how they have to learn.
Mark, now, hey, it's a big move. I know you're familiar with the city and the organization, but you're coming from California, you're in BC, and you're going to eventually get to Winnipeg. And, we're at the end of July right now with a very, very short summer. What's the coach's to-do list over the course of the month of August, both on and off the ice, before you get ready for camp?
Yeah. Well, I got to find a place to live in Winnipeg. I guess that's important. But no, I just, I'm going through the staff, talking to everybody. I'm trying to find out, what they liked about the previous seasons and what they didn't like, and trying to contact all the players that, were with the Moose last year, and just touch base, introduce myself, and, plan to get into Winnipeg in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and set up and start getting familiar with some of the office staff. So, there's a lot to do.
Hey, and one more for you, just on the setup here in Winnipeg, and we've talked about this before. And as a former Moose employee, I know the challenges that you have at times if your American League team is far, far away. When you look at the fact that the big club is right down the hall and the organization's all essentially over one building, inside one building, how big is that for the organization, but also for you as the head coach to be so close to the parent club?
Yeah, it's important. I think that it's important to create those relationships with the Jets staff as well. We like to try in Winnipeg play the same systems in the American Hockey League as the NHL team does. So if a player gets called up, he's familiar with the system and the hockey language that they use. So one of the things that being under the same roof does is it enables American Hockey League to mimic the NHL, and that's very important for the young players. So it's a huge advantage.
Well, Mark, listen, we really appreciate you taking the time. Enjoy what time you have left out in BC, because I'm sure it'll be an incredibly busy August, and can't wait to have you back on the program talking about Moose hockey and all the Jets prospects that you'll be coaching coming up in a couple months.
Yeah, super excited, and thanks for having me, Andrew. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark. We'll talk soon. There he is, Mark Morrison, new head coach of the Manitoba Moose, joining us on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Great stuff with Mark, and I know so many people in the organization spoke so highly of Mark, obviously spending the last few years in the National Hockey League, but that's sort of an opportunity to get behind the bench in an organization you're familiar with, certainly seems like, a great opportunity for Mark to continue his path, as a head coach. And of course, the Winnipeg Jets getting a guy that they know intimately well, to continue the draft and develop model that, has continued to bear fruit for the Winnipeg Jets over the last few years. Thanks to Mark for joining us.